I'm talking today to Patrick Tresset, who is a French artist who lives and works in London. Patrick develops and presents theatrical installations with robotic agents as actors, which are evocations of humanness.
There is this desire to be integrated into the mainstream art and contemporary art, so new media is more general. But in a certain way, I was thinking this morning that it's a bit like it shouldn't be considered more important than to qualify photography. Like you don't say photography art and it's just a very big thing. Well, in fact, digital art or things, it seems to be very specific and classify something which doesn't need to be that specific. It's just a big thing like photography or sculpture or something like that, I think.
Could you briefly summarize your own contribution to digital art?
Yeah, I mean, I'm known for exhibiting and developing and building robots that draw. So I present installations with robots that look at reality and make gestures and make drawings. So I do different installations like that. So I'm known for that in general. But in general, I also use computational system to produce drawings and things like that.
And your robots, I get the impression that it's not just producing a robot that draws. It's in a sense investigating the way in which we relate to robots as almost human, performing a quote human activity unquote.
Yeah. I mean, a part of what I'm playing with in my installations and things like that, because I exhibit the robots in action. So I use the robot as actors in performative installations in a certain way. And I use them also to produce the drawings. So there is both. So I'm investigating the relation, but more how it's possible to play with humans using robots. And the thing is that there is a misconception about robots. People think that robots are more than machines. And in certain ways, they are more than machines because people perceive them as more than machines. But in certain ways, they're only machines that have programs, even if they react, even if they're semi-autonomous or autonomous. They're still machines, but people see them differently, and it's what is interesting to explore with this capacity to manipulate humans, or to manipulate their perception in an interesting way. But it's very close to puppetry or something like that, I think.
Mm-hmm. Certainly, I noticed your exhibition at Waterman's recently. A large part of the fun was watching how people reacted to it.
Yes.
People standing there trying to be drawn and things like that. Yes. Could I ask, I mean, how did you actually get involved in digital art as such? You know, what's your background? How did it start?
Well, I was... so first I had a computer when I was very young. When I was 10 years old, I got... it was a board with an hexadecimal keyboard and a thing, and it was only programmable in assembly. But at 10 years old, you know how you are. If you're a kid, you know you focus on something and you get obsessed, and then you manage to do things. So managed to do things, and then I got very interested in computing, and especially for this possibility of creating things that have a behavior, creating things that are able to do things. And so there was that, and I studied a bit computing, and then teenager year and things like that, and I never worked in computing, and I decided instead to be a painter, and I moved to London to become a painter. And I tried to be a painter for like traditional, passionate painter for 13 years. And then I lost my way with painting. I just didn't make sense anymore. I couldn't paint with emotions. I couldn't draw with emotions anymore. And in the meantime, the internet appeared. Computers had evolved a lot, and I had the intuition that it was possible to do something with computers, and I started to use computers to try to pursue my practice or to find a new artistic practice. So that's how it happened. I got into it, and then after I worked first the 2 first years on my own, and after I joined Goldsmiths College, where they were just starting to transform the computing department into an artistic computing department in Stonewall.
Did you feel that you were very much breaking new ground, that nobody else was doing what you were doing?
Well, No, not really, because of the internet. Because I started that after the internet, so I found the algorists, Roman Verotsko and Harold Cohen, and then more contemporary artists like contemporary Paul Brown, Stanza later in Nether and things like that. So I can remember Stanza at the time had a very big, was quite famous on the internet, so he was quite prominent. But I became fascinated more by Verotsko, by Roman Verotsko, more so than Harold Cohen, even if my work is closer to Cohen, I think. So no, I didn't have the impression of breaking new grounds, and for me, using computers doesn't have anything special in a certain way. I don't feel, there was not a big rupture with I just use computers to pursue my artistic practice. For me, I don't believe in rupture, and I believe in things being repeated in a certain way in art history. So I don't think that art is art. After what you use to do it, doesn't really matter in a certain way. Especially nowadays in contemporary art, people use whatever they need to do their work. It's not.
So you didn't find any more difficulties in setting up the sort of practice that you now have than you would have done if you'd been still a painter? Or?
No, and actually I had a lot of difficulty. There was something nice with using computers and machines, is the distance. That I found it very difficult to exhibit my work as a painter, as an emotional thing, and the distance with the distance that we have with the creation, with the action when you use computers, that you're not directly involved, just makes it far easier for me to exhibit, because it's less my work. When I was very shy with my painting, so I found it very, very, very difficult to exhibit. When with computers, I don't have any problems. With robots, of course, sometimes, but it's far easier.
Patrick, which digital artist do you particularly admire, if I may ask?
Well, there are the people who are influential, like especially Roman Verotsko. I really like his career, his work. His work is very high quality, and he's in the same way a traditional artist. He's a traditional visual artist, and what he has written, the tools that he has written to produce his work are very interesting. I went to visit him last year. It was great. And otherwise, I admire most artists to make a living out of their work in digital. Paul Brown, I really like his work also because of the kind of very, I like the kind of very coherent career in certain ways, when there is a strong line in the work. Otherwise, as contemporary artist, I really like Crayola, Davide Crayola, who really, him also use computation, but use that more as a producer. He used developers and things like that to write the software for his work. But he works really as a kind of traditional artist with things, and he has his career, which is very interesting. And it's a lot about aesthetics and things. But there are many. I admire most of, not most digital artists, but a lot of people who do installations also. Because that's one of the nice things with the kind of work that I do, is that you always go to set up, and when it's festivals, you have other artists setting up, and we chat, and we have all the same problems with things breaking, or transporting, or getting paid, and all this kind of thing. So it creates this kind of, link between people. Now there is this nice thing to go to install the work often with people who do installation, and it's very nice because you get to travel and to meet the other artists and things, which is a very nice part of the work. But
it is a very growing and quite confusing field, in that there are a lot of people doing a lot of different things. And obviously one of the ways in which you keep in touch with it is just by exhibiting yourself, as you say, and meeting other exhibitors. But where else would you go to find out what was happening in the digital art world, would you use the internet?
It doesn't really exist. I mean, the digital artwork doesn't exist anymore because it's a bit like photography. If we say this morning when I was preparing the questions and I was thinking, oh, I'm going to replace digital by photography to see if the questions make sense, you know, as a big thing, and in a certain way now I see. I mean, that's the problem. I'm in it, so I don't see what's specific about it. And now I'm invited in traditional exhibitions, so there is, I see that there is a big difference, and people don't see it as if it was normal artworks, because there's this problem of uniqueness and things, and on the effect on the audience also is different. But I think it's just another medium. So, oh yeah, the question, where would I go to? I don't know, because I see it. I meet the artists at exhibitions, you know. It's all the things, or online, you know, because I go on certain website or I look, but mainly I meet people, you know, because I do exhibit a lot. So I meet.
What about critics? I mean, is there anybody whose opinion you particularly value, whether they're a critic or an academic? Is there somebody who you would read if you were considering going to an exhibition to decide whether or not to do so, or would you just make up your own mind?
I generally make up my own mind. I mean, it's the same thing. Critics would be interesting if they talk about my work. You know, there is the same, but the thing that there is not yet I think in digital art. Even that, and that's one of the problems of digital art. It's still not. I think that curators or critics, even if they exist, they're still not a universal language about it. And that's the beauty of digital art, that it's not a movement like conceptual art or something like that, where there's a well-defined language. And yeah, I don't know. There's still it's changing a lot, and maybe I don't read enough or things like that. But there's still, for people from traditional contemporary art, there's still a problem of language, of not having the right, even the right ways to speak about things using digital medium.
The next question I've got here is to ask you where you would go if you wanted to buy a piece of digital art. But you were saying earlier, before we started the interview, that in fact these days it's not so much, digital art is not so much bought, it's more rented and exhibited.
Well, yeah, I mean, to buy digital art, I'm talking about for my work, where I show installations, and because they are entertaining, that's my market. You know, so I make my living by showing those installations. It's a bit like a performance. It's more like a theater thing, where I get paid for exhibiting those things, and I sell the drawings in galleries. So you would go to a gallery to buy something. You know, it's the same thing, or an art fair, or directly to the artist, because the thing is that we are still not. There are still not that many galleries who have artists who use digital technologies. Or it's not totally true. The thing is that nowadays a lot of students who come out of traditional contemporary art school, Beaux-Arts or art school, use digital media. And those don't have problems to sell through the normal channels, through the gallery channels. You see more and more, you know, but there is not the specificity of the thing.
It is interesting, this difference between the traditional and the non-traditional art world, isn't there?
But it is changing very, very rapidly. Also, the quantity of artists using new media is changing, and now you have also this younger generation of artists who are coming out of art school and who have totally a traditional contemporary art training and just use digital media, but without, because one of the nice things that there was with using digital technologies or contemporary technologies was the freedom. You could invent your own language, and that is in a certain way disappearing, because you have those artists who come and have the normal contemporary art language and use that. And so that is, but it's, you know, that's just how it is. But I can remember talking about that with, don't know if you know Mignonneau and Sommerer. They are the two artists who are quite well known from the, I think they were quite well known in the 90s, and now they're based in Linz and they run a department. But they were talking about the same thing, that now with young people don't have the same freedom that we are.
You mentioned that it was and possibly still is to some extent possible for a digital artist to invent in your own language, to make your own rules in a sense. And it's always struck me that there's a strong countercultural element with digital art, partly because it came out of a very countercultural software environment. Do you feel that's an important thing still, or do you think that's fading away, or what?
I guess it's still, well, it's still possible to do your own work, an original work, like not following the canon of contemporary art, because there are some very, I mean, it is very academic, contemporary art in a certain way. And it's still possible because there is this alternative market, because I mean the market is important, even more exhibition space if we want to be more artistic. So it's possible to have a career and to exhibit work without being at all part of the contemporary art network in a certain way, or world. And so that allows people to do their own things. So as long as it's good, you find your way to exhibit things in new media or digital art, because of all the festivals and things like that. If you do something that's good, you can exhibit it. In contemporary art, it's not true. You can do excellent work, and it's far more structured than things.
I mean, are there specific influencers and gatekeepers in the digital art world, you know, whether they're academics or gallerists or curators or whatever?
I don't know, I believe less. It's the same thing, I don't really know, because I'm lucky that with my work so far, I haven't had to look for work. People, and it's amazing, I mean, it's a great position to be in. But no, you have people like Irene, who has been working like that, you know, who is taking this importance, you know, over the past 10 years that she's been working in the field, 7 years. And there are people, of course, there is organization like Ars Electronica, and in Canada there is Alain Thibault, who organizes the Biennale of Digital Art in Montreal. You have people like that who are important, but because there are so many festivals and things, it's spread. Yes, there are some places like Ars Electronica where if you exhibit after, you find your work you can find places to exhibit it for the next 3 years, because all the curators go there. So if your work is good, it's going to be seen and taken for festivals. But otherwise, it is, I don't know, because of course there are well-known critics and theorists, but I'm not sure if they have that much weight. But things are changing very quickly, because things are becoming more established.
Have you been involved with the Computer Art Society at all? I mean,
yeah, of course. I mean, yes, I've been involved with, because when I got interested in doing things with computers, so I looked on the internet and I found the Computer Art Society, and I can remember I sent an email to Alan Sutcliffe, and he was great. He answered quickly, and he took one of the images that he put in the Page magazine, one of my early work done with a pen plotter. And also I found Nick's name, Nick Lambert, and I can remember going to visit him and showing on the floor of his office at Birkbeck my first drawings, you know, with a pen plotter. And I think I presented twice at the Computer Art Society. Oh no, in total 4 times at the Computer Art Society. So it's right, because I mean it's an important thing when you look at the history of computer art, or whatever you call it. I mean, computer art for the Computer Art Society, it's, you know, it's the oldest organization, and there is this continuity and this thing. And
Turning to the elephant in the room, money, how is your practice actually being funded?
So first it was self-funded until I found my way in Stanway. So the learning was self-funded. Then when but I was lucky enough that so I did a master, and my master's project at Goldsmiths, they encouraged me to do a PhD based on it, and we got some funding from that, from the Leverhulme Trust, and that was amazing because we got really a big bunch of money to finance my PhD, but also to pay for traveling and things like that. And in effect, I used that to launch my career as a digital. I should not say that, but no, I totally established my first robot. I used all the money for research and to travel and to promote my work. And that was really the thing that kick-started everything. And after, no, I don't. I solely, my income comes from my work, from artistic work. I don't teach or things like that. So in a certain way, but I rely in a certain way on public funding because all the places where I exhibit, most of the places, are publicly funded, like museums, festivals, and things like that. So I rely on public funding, but not directly. You know, but when I do new projects, I finance them myself. For example, at Waterman, so they had some funding for some of the production costs, generally for the hardware. It's difficult to get paid the development time.
Do you find that funding ever comes with strings, you know, with suggestions as to what you might do? Not at all.
Or maybe I'm not very good at understanding that I'm supposed to do things.
You don't feel it inhibits you in any way?
No. I mean, the thing is that I've become an artist quite late in life, and so it took me. I often say, because young people say, "Oh yeah, it's cool, you live from your work," but it has taken me 20 years or more than 20 years to be alone. So and I do it for the idea of freedom and being able to do. So for me, it doesn't make sense if people ask me to do other things. And again, I'm very lucky that you know I don't. For the moment, of course, I'm not wealthy because it's this kind of art, but I don't need to look for work, and I do exhibit a lot to finance things, but I'm quite in comfortable position because my work is entertaining, so yeah, I do get a lot of requests.
And you don't have difficulties, I mean, obviously don't have difficulties finding exhibitions?
I never look for exhibitions, and I do I mean, I always think that it's going to stop. There's always during the year a time where it's a bit harder, so there's no buffer. But no, I do I don't know, I do 13, 14 exhibitions a year or something like that, and I don't look for them. But it's going to stop at some point. But it's I mean, it's a privilege thing. But so instead of teaching, because there's this choice when you do digital art, either you teach or you have another activity, and then you do your art. Personally, I do that by exhibiting, so it's a lot of work too to exhibit, you know, to organize and things. So in the end, I think I have as much time to produce new work as somebody who will be teaching. But the difference is that a lot more people see the work in reality.
Have any of your digital works, as opposed to the drawings your digital works made, have any of them ever been sold?
The drawings? So
as opposed to the drawings, which in a sense are traditional art, just made in a non-traditional way. But
yeah. So the drawings, lots of them are sold. And the robots, I sold 5, but it was really because I needed the cash. And actually, I sold it to a gallery who has them in permanence, and he sells portraits. So he sells the drawings in a traditional way. And he
I see. So he actually uses it to make the drawings and then sells the drawings.
Yeah, and he pays the rent of his gallery like that, which is quite nice.
Interesting, yes. I mean, it's one of the things I'm trying to find out is who actually buys and collects digital art. Presumably you haven't.
No, I'm actually switching. I'm actually working on building new robots, because for the moment all the robots that I've built were built for show, for exhibition, as performance things, not as collectible artwork. And now I'm working on a new version, which is because I used to do furniture at some point to make furniture. So more doing objects that are more collectible objects, and also that, for example, have one software which is attached to this system that I more individualized work, which would be more purchasable as an artwork. Because at the moment, my robots have been more performer, and they're more performative pieces than artworks like sculptures. And I'm switching to transforming it into a sculpture, I mean time-based sculpture or whatever you want to call them, and so making them collectible. Because at the moment they're too messy to be bought by someone, because if someone's going to spend, you know, £10,000 or £20,000 on something, it has to be finished in the right, you know, yes. It has to have the level of quality of something of this price. And most of the value of my robots were because of their action and their behavior, yes, rather than their objects.
Do you think that digital art is more widely accepted now than when you started being involved with it? And if so, what does this mean in practice?
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, I guess you see it more everywhere, and I guess I am invited in more traditional exhibition. I mean, in more traditional places, but not sure. And there might be few more galleries that have them. Apparently, you see more digital artworks in art fairs and things like that. So the thing is that I don't think it's that much a lack of collectors I mean, so the things are changing, but it's more galleries to sell the work. So that's changing. There are more galleries selling this kind of work. But for me, I don't think it's changing. It's more like it's more something that I'm going to explore more, because yeah, for me at this stage, to go further in my career, I need a gallery. So it makes it more possible, I guess, nowadays, even with a traditional gallery. I think that now you see traditional galleries taking on artists that use digital technologies.
I don't think they're actually, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm not aware of any actual digital art galleries in London.
No, yes, there is a Fletcher. Carol Fletcher.
Carol Fletcher, all right, okay.
And they actually have I mean, they would not call themselves as a digital gallery, but they would say artists who use technologies and science, something like that. But they would not. And actually, I was looking at their site. Now they even have got a thing that help artists establish themselves, or young artists to sell themselves, train them for, I think, 3 years, I think. To integrate them to the market. I mean, we should not say that, because I'm sure they don't put it like that, but in reality, it's what it is to the art market.
Well, there's a level of practicality, isn't there? I mean, you've got to produce something which somebody would be able to buy and use or view or whatever.
Yeah. I mean, an artist is somebody who produces artworks, right? You know, that's the thing. But that's why for my work it stays on the performance side of things. Of course, it's switching, but and there is that in a certain way the conceptual art and installation art kind of open also, I think, a way to digital art.
Yes.
Because it became an habit to have things that are not paintings or sculptures. Yes. So that gave, I think, a lot of freedom in installation art and performance also.
Yes. And solved a lot of the legal problems with copyright and things like that.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yes. In terms of digital art as a whole, I mean, are there any trends that you think are particularly important for the future, either good ones or bad ones?
I have no idea if there are... No, I mean, there's always this... No, I mean, there is a good thing that, in a certain way, So I started, it's quite recent, I mean, in comparison to my age. So I started really to do things with, I started initially to do things with computing in 2000. No, I guess it's not that recent. But then the first robot I exhibited them in 2010. And in a certain way, computers were still at their, not beginning, but personal computers were still not mysterious things, but they were breaking, crashing, and things like that. When all that now is stopped, you know, things don't crash, or, well, I don't know, my computers don't crash anymore. But technology is far more accepted and integrated into everybody's life, I think. So that makes it more natural. So now, but I don't know if there are different movements in people using digital technologies. I mean, there are people doing drawing machines, there are people doing installations, interactive installation, except that doesn't. Yes, there are people who do things that are really designed for public art. I'm not sure if there are really movements after. I think it's the same movement that you have in other type of art in a certain way.
I get the impression to some extent it's more a technical specialisation. You know, there are people who do artworks relating to databases, and people who do artworks relating to machine learning, and people who do artworks relating to physical robots, in your case.
It's why it might not be,
And because it's a different skill set, you know, they can't easily necessarily switch from the one to the other.
Well, yeah, I mean, nowadays that's a nice thing, is computing is so much easier now.
Yes.
I mean, the tools you have to program are so well designed, and
yes.
The libraries, like in machine learning, it's amazing.
Yes.
The tools you get for free, you know, it's amazing. To experiment with machine learning, you know, in an afternoon you set up your things, and well, you need a big, good computer. Well, yeah, and yeah, it's quite amazing that.
As a last question, just turning to the Computer Arts Society again, what do you think that the Computer Arts Society can most usefully do in the next 5 or indeed the next 50 years?
I don't know. I think what is good with the Computer Society is that it exists. And you know, there's a publication, but the fact that there is this long-lasting organization and this kind of continuity in the activities. And after, no, the talks or the associated talks and the link, for example, with EVA, you know, the conference, those are interesting things. After, yeah, I'm not sure. I think the thing is that it exists is a good thing.
Yes, yes.
It's, just that, that it continues to exist. I'm not sure what it should do, but it's,
Patrick Trosset, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.